Hi, welcome to our brand new Microsoft Azure Fundamental AZ 900 Practice Questions 2022. In this video, we are going to discuss all the dummy questions of the Microsoft AZ 900 exam. I'm your host Neetu Rai from updegree, and let's get started. Question 1. Which feature of Azure AD allows you to restrict access to a resource based on the geographical location of the user? Now, the options are Option A, Directory Roles. Option B, Privileged Identity Management. Option C, Role-Based Access Control. Option D, Conditional Access. And the correct answer is Option D, Conditional Access. Explanation. Conditional access allowed administrators to create rules around who is and is not allowed access to a resource based on a number of available signals. Question 2. Your company has a set of virtual machines configured in Azure. The company management asked you to explore the options to cut down VM running cost. Which of the following options would you consider for cutting down the VM running cost? Select 3 options. Now, the options are Option A. Replace the VM with reserved instances. Option B. Reduce the size of the virtual machines. Option C. Change region the virtual machine is located in. Option D. Change the data center the virtual machine is located in. Option E. Deallocate the public IP address from the virtual machine. And the correct answer is Option A. Replace the VM with reserved instances. Option B. Reduce the size of the virtual machines. Option C. Change region the virtual machine is located in. Explanation. Option A is correct. You can consider buying reserved instances to get discounts on the virtual machine's running cost. Option B is correct. Right VM sizing will help to reduce the cost. Option C is correct. Regions where the VM is deployed will impact the pricing. Option D and E are incorrect. Data center and public IP address will not impact the pricing. Question 3. What software using an intuitive interface can be downloaded for Windows, Mac OS or Linux that helps you manage your Azure cloud storage resources from your desktop? Now, the options are Option A, Azure Storage Explorer. Option B, Azure Portal. Option C, Azure File Sync. Option D, Azure Data Box. And the correct answer is Option A, Azure Storage Explorer. Explanation. Azure Storage Explorer can help you upload, download, and manage Azure storage blobs, files, queues, and tables, as well as Azure Data Lake storage entities and Azure Managed Disk. Configure storage permissions and access controls, tiers, and rules. Question 4. A company deployed an application on Azure. Now, they want to implement disaster recovery for the application. Which of the following aspects of Azure could be used for disaster recovery purposes? Now, the options are Option A, Azure Data Centers. Option B, Azure Resource Groups. Option C, Azure Subscriptions. Option D, Azure Regions. And the correct answer is Option D, Azure Regions. Explanation. You can deploy your resources across multiple regions. In an event of a disaster and one region goes down, you will still have the other region available. Option A is incorrect. Data centers are pertinent to just a region and can't be used for disaster recovery purposes. Option B is incorrect. Azure resource groups are used to logically group resources. Option C is incorrect. Azure subscriptions are used for billing purposes. Question 5. How do you invite a person who is not an employee of your company to use one of your applications protected by Azure Active Directory? Now, the options are: Option A. Invite them as a guest user. Option B. Azure AD conditional access. Option C. Add them as a user. Option D. External users cannot be managed by Azure Active Directory. And the correct answer is option A. Invite them as a guest user. Explanation: with Azure AD B2B collaboration, you can invite anyone to collaborate with your organization using their own work, school, or social account. Question 6. Select yes or no for the following statement. A company is planning to deploy an application on a set of Azure virtual machines. They have set up an Azure subscription and an Azure AD tenant. Would the addition of an Azure load balancer to the application architecture increase its overall availability? Now, the options are: Option A, yes. Option B, no. And the correct answer is option A, yes. Explanation: with the Azure load balancer, you can increase the overall availability of your applications. Question 7. What are the resource groups? Now, the options are: Option A. Automatically assign groups of resources that all have the same type. Option B. A folder structure in Azure in which you organize resources like databases, virtual machines, virtual networks, or almost any resource. Option C. Within Azure security model, users are organized into groups, and in those groups are granted permissions to resources. Option D. Based on the tag assigned to a resource by the deployment script, it is assigned to a group. And the correct answer is option B. A folder structure in Azure in which you organize resources like databases, virtual machines, virtual networks, or almost any resource. Explanation: resource groups, a folder structure in Azure in which you organize resources like databases, virtual machines, virtual networks, or almost any resource. Question 8. Which of the following services allows events generated by Azure resources to be sent to applications? Now, the options are: Option A, Azure Event Grid. Option B, Azure Notification Hubs. Option C, Azure Event Hubs. Option D, Azure Logic Apps. And the correct answer is option A, Azure Event Grid. Explanation: Azure Event Grid is the right service for this requirement. Azure Event Grid is a complete event routing service actively running on top of the Azure Service Fabric. Event Grid issues events from various services like Azure Storage Blobs to different handlers like Azure Functions. Azure Event Grid was invented to build event-based and serverless applications on Azure at an ease. Question 9. Paying per GB for an unmanaged storage account is an example of what type of cloud pricing model? Now, the options are: Option A, spot pricing. Option B, consumption model. Option C, reservations. Option D, hybrid benefit. And the correct answer is option B, consumption model. Explanation: in the consumption model, you are charged for only what you use. For an unmanaged storage account, you pay per GB used. You can save money by deleting files. Question 10. You are planning to implement Azure MultiFactor Authentication. Which of the following is the recommended policy? Now, the options are: Option A, enable per user. Option B, enable per session. Option C, enable conditional access. Option D, enable security defaults. And The correct answer is option C. Enable conditional access. Explanation. To secure user sign-in events in Azure AD, you can require multi-factor authentication. Enabling Azure AD multi-factor authentication using conditional access policies is the recommended approach to protect users. Conditional access is an Azure AD Premium P1 or P2 feature that lets you apply rules to require MFA as needed in certain scenarios. Option A is incorrect, as it is not advised per user. Also, it would be time consuming and difficult to maintain for a large number of users. Option B is incorrect because the session is per user login and policy is not applied to a user session. Option D is incorrect because it is applicable for a free tier by default. Question 11. True or false? Azure Tenant is a dedicated and trusted instance of Azure Active Directory that's automatically created when your organization signs up for a Microsoft Cloud Service subscription. Now, the options are option A, false, option B, true, and the correct answer is option B, true. Explanation. Yes, Azure Tenant is a dedicated and trusted instance of Azure AD that's automatically created when your organization signs up for a Microsoft Cloud Service subscription. Question 12. You want to deploy a virtual machine scale set to Azure. Could you deploy the scale set using the Azure command line interface? Now, the options are option A, yes, option B, no, and the correct answer is option A, yes. Explanation. A virtual machine scale set allows you to deploy and manage a set of auto-scaling virtual machines. You can scale the number of VMS in the scale set manually or define rules to auto-scale based on resource uses like CPU, memory demand, or network traffic. An Azure load balancer then distributes traffic to the VM instances in the scale set. In this quick start, you create a virtual machine scale set and deploy a sample application with the Azure CLI. Question 13. What is the most common and recommended type of storage account? Now, the options are option A, Premium Block Blobs, option B, Standard General Purpose V1, option C, Premium Page Blobs, option D, General Purpose V2, and the correct answer is option D, General Purpose V2. Explanation. General Purpose V2 is the standard storage account type for blobs, file shares, queues, and tables. Recommended for most scenarios using Azure Storage. Question 14. Select yes or no for the following statement. Azure Synapse Analytics can be used to visualize the data in the warehouse with Power BI. Now, the options are option A, yes, option B, no, and the correct answer is option A, yes. Explanation. Yes, Synapse can be leveraged to visualize the data. Azure Synapse Analytics is a limitless analytics service that brings together data integration, enterprise data warehousing, and big data analytics. It gives you the freedom to query data on your terms, using either serverless or dedicated options at scale. Azure Synapse brings these worlds together with a unified experience to ingest, explore, prepare, transform, manage, and serve data for immediate BI and machine learning needs. Question 15. When deploying a virtual machine into an availability set, how does Azure treat that VM differently? Now, the options are option A, it will auto-scale the VM, adding and removing instances as demand increases and decreases. Option B, it will place the VM on a physically separate server and roll out Azure updates to it in a staggered manner. Option C. It will place the VM on the same physical server as the other VMS in the set. Option D. It will place the VM in another data center as other VMS in the set. And the correct answer is option B. It will place the VM on a physically separate server and roll out Azure updates to it in a staggered manner. Explanation. An availability set is a logical grouping of VMS that allows Azure to understand how your application is built to provide for redundancy and availability. Each virtual machine in your availability set is assigned an update domain and a fault domain by the underlying Azure platform. Fault domains define the group of virtual machines that share a common power source and network switch. By default, the virtual machines configured within your availability set are separated across up to 3 fault domains. While placing your virtual machines into an availability set does not protect your application from operating system or application specific failures, it does limit the impact of potential physical hardware failures, network outages, or power interruptions. Question 16. A company is planning to set up a series of Azure SQL databases. If the databases have unpredictable uses, which of the following features can reduce the overall cost? Now, the options are Option A. Azure Reservation. Option B. Elastic Pools. Option C. Single databases. Option D. Clustered databases. And the correct answer is option B. Elastic Pools. Explanation. You can use elastic pools to make more efficient use of the cost when having databases with unpredictable usage demands. Azure SQL Database Elastic Pools are a simple and cost-effective solution for managing and scaling multiple databases that have varying and unpredictable usage demands. The databases in an elastic pool are on a single server and share a set number of resources at a set price. Elastic pools in Azure SQL database enable SaaS developers to optimize the price performance for a group of databases within a prescribed budget, while delivering performance elasticity for each database. Question 17. Your company is planning to create a Cosmos DB account. Which of the following is used to measure the cost of Cosmos DB? Select two options. Now the options are Option A. Storage. Option B. Number of clusters. Option C. Number of nodes. Option D. Throughput. And the correct answer is Option A and D. Storage and throughput. Explanation. You will be charged on the basis of the amount of throughput you assign for the Cosmos DB account and also the storage. Question 18. What two advantages does cloud computing elasticity give to you? Pick two options. Now, the options are Option A. You can serve users better during peak traffic periods by automatically adding more capacity. Option B. Servers have become a commodity and Microsoft doesn't even need to even fix servers that fail within Azure. Option C. You can save money. Option D. You can do more regular backups and you won't lose as much when that backup gets restored. And the correct answer is option A. You can serve users better during peak traffic periods by automatically adding more capacity. And option C. You can save money. Explanation. Elasticity saves you money during slow periods and also allows you to handle the highest peak of traffic. Question 19. Your company is planning on creating several policies in the Azure Policy Service. These policies are all meant to achieve a particular goal. Which of the following could be used to organize these policies into one group? Now, the options are Option A. Management groups. Option B. Initiative definition. Option C. Resource groups. Option D. Subscriptions. And the correct answer is option B. Initiative definition. Explanation. Initiatives enable you to group several related policy definitions to simplify assignments and management because you work with a group as a single item. For example, you can group related tagging policy definitions into a single initiative. Rather than assigning each policy individually, you apply the initiative. Question 20. What are the groups of subscriptions called? Now, the options are Option A, Management Groups. Option B, Azure Policy. Option C, Subscription Groups. Option D, ARM Groups. And the correct answer is Option A, Management Groups. Explanation. Subscriptions can be nested and placed into management groups to make managing them easier. Question 21. A company is planning to implement an Azure DDoS protection standard plan. The company has multiple subscriptions. The total number of resources across subscriptions is more than 100. Which of the following statement is correct based on the given requirements? Now, the options are Option A, DDoS protection standard plan does not meet the first requirement. Option B, DDoS protection standard plan does not meet the second requirement. Option C, DDoS protection standard plan meets both the requirements. And the correct answer is option B, DDoS protection standard plan does not meet the second requirement. Explanation. DDoS protection standard plan cannot support more than 100 resources. Since the requirement needs to support more than 100 resources. Option B is an accurate statement. Option A is incorrect because DDoS protection standard plan can be used across multiple subscriptions. Option C is incorrect. DDoS protection standard plan cannot support the second requirement. It can support only up to 100 resources. Question 22. If you wanted to get an alert every time a new virtual machine is created, where could you create that? Now, the options are Option A, Azure Dashboard. Option B, Azure Policy. Option C, Subscription Settings. Option D, Azure Monitor. And the correct answer is Option D, Azure Monitor. Explanation. The best place to track events at the resource level is Azure Monitor. Question 23. Your company has implemented Azure Information Protection. However, a newly joined user is unable to access it. Which two of the following roles would give the user access to Azure Information Protection? Select two options. Now, the options are Option A, Information Protection Administrator. Option B, Cloud Application Administrator. Option C, Group Administrator. Option D, Security Administrator. And the correct answer is Option A, Information Protection Administrator. And Option D, Security Administrator. Explanation. In Azure Active Directory, if another administrator or non-administrator needs to manage Azure AD resources, you assign them an Azure AD role that provides the permissions they need. Option A is correct. Information Protection Administrator role can create and manage all aspects of app registrations. Option D is correct. Security Administrator can manage all aspects of the Cloud App Security product. Option B is incorrect because Cloud Application Administrator is part of Application Administrators. Option C is incorrect because Group Administrator has access to administrative features. Question 24. Fill in the blanks. Dash is the strategy of layering multiple security defenses on top of each other to provide a stronger protection than any single defensive mechanism alone. Now, the options are Option A, Defense in Depth. Option B, Azure Firewall. Option C, Network Access Control. Option D, Azure AD Conditional Access. And the correct answer is Option A, Defense in Depth. Explanation. A common cybersecurity approach used by organizations to protect their digital assets is to leverage a defense in depth strategy. The SANS Institute defines defense in depth as protecting a computer network with a series of defensive mechanisms such that if one mechanism fails, another will already be in place to thwart an attack. Question 25. A company wants to implement a security solution for the users who are on-premises Active Directory and has the following requirements. Monitor user login or logout. Monitor Active Directory user account changes. Monitor machine account. Which is the best resource option to satisfy this requirement? Now, the options are Option A, Azure AD Password Protection. Option B, Azure AD Identity Protection. Option C, Azure AD Privileged Identity Management. Option D, Microsoft Defender for Identity. And the correct answer is option D, Microsoft Defender for Identity. Explanation. Microsoft Defender for Identity is a cloud-based security solution that leverages your on-premises Active Directory signals to identify, detect, and investigate advanced threats, compromised identities, and malicious insider actions directed at your organization. Defender for Identity enables SecOps analysts and security professionals struggling to detect advanced attacks in hybrid environments to monitor users, entity behavior, and activities with learning-based analytics, protect user identities and credentials stored in Active Directory, identify and investigate suspicious user activities, and advanced attacks throughout the kill chain provide clear incident information on a simple timeline for fast triage. Option A is incorrect. Azure AD Password Protection only provides password protection features. Option B is incorrect. Azure AD Identity Protection is used only for identity protections. Option C is incorrect. Azure AD Privileged Identity Management is used only for important resources protection. Question 26. Which feature of Azure AD allows you to restrict access to a resource based on the geographical location of the user? Now, the options are Option A, Directory Roles. Option B, Privileged Identity Management. Option C, Role-Based Access Control. Option D, Conditional Access. And the correct answer is option D, Conditional Access. Explanation. Conditional access allows administrators to create rules around who is and is not allowed access to a resource based on a number of available signals. Question 27. You are planning to implement Azure MultiFactor Authentication. Which of the following is the recommended policy? Now, the options are Option A, Enable per user. Option B, Enable per session. Option C, Enable conditional access. Option D, Enable security defaults. And the correct answer is option C, Enable conditional access. Explanation. To secure user sign-in events in Azure AD, you can require multi-factor authentication. Enabling Azure AD multi-factor authentication using conditional access policies is the recommended approach to protect users. Conditional access is an Azure AD Premium P1 or P2 feature that lets you apply rules to require MFA as needed in certain scenarios. Option A is incorrect, as it is not advised per user. Also, it would be time consuming and difficult to maintain for a large number of users. Option B is incorrect, because the session is per user login and policy is not applied to a user session. Option D is incorrect, because it is applicable for a free tier by default. Question 28. Deploying Azure App Services applications consists of what two components? Pick two options. Now, the options are Option A, Managing Operating System Updates. Option B, Configuration. Option C, Packaged Code. Option D, Database Scripts. And the correct answer is option B, Configuration. And option C, Packaged Code. Explanation. Azure App Services, Platform as a Service, consists of code and configuration? Question 29. You are planning to purchase an Azure support plan. Which of the following is the most cost-effective plan that has the following embedded into the plan? Access to the full set of Azure Advisor recommendations. Business hours access to support engineers via email. Now, the options are: Option A, Basic. Option B, Developer. Option C, Standard. Option D, Professional Direct. And the correct answer is Option B, Developer. Explanation: the developer plan is the most cost effective to satisfy these requirements. Question 30. Select yes or no for the following statement. With Azure free account, you can access the Azure Knowledge Center. Now, the options are: Option A, yes. Option B, no. And the correct answer is Option A, yes. Explanation: yes, Azure Knowledge Center is free to everyone. Question 31. How does Azure calculate the availability for all services? Now the options are: Option A, in a daily billing cycle. Option B, in a weekly billing cycle. Option C, in a monthly billing cycle. Option D, in a yearly billing cycle. And the correct answer is Option C, in a monthly billing cycle. Explanation: the billing for the service level agreement is done over a monthly period. Question 32. Which Azure service will help you to build applications that would have some basic level of artificial intelligence modules? Now the options are: Option A, Azure Machine Learning Studio. Option B, Azure Cognitive Services. Option C, Azure HD Insights. Option D, Azure App Services. And the correct answer is Option B, Azure Cognitive Services. Explanation: Azure Cognitive Services are cloud-based services with REST APIs, client library SDKs, and user interfaces available to help you build cognitive intelligence into your applications. You can add cognitive features to your applications without having artificial intelligence, AI, or data science skills. Cognitive services comprises various AI services that enable you to build cognitive solutions that can see, hear, speak, understand, and even make decisions. Question 33. Which Azure service could help you to meet the below requirements? Create virtual machines from pre-created custom images that have all the software and tools already installed. Set auto shutdown and auto start schedules on virtual machines. Now the options are: Option A, Azure DevOps. Option B, Azure Logic Apps. Option C, Azure Functions. Option D, Azure Dev Test Labs. And the correct answer is Option D, Azure Dev Test Labs. Explanation: Azure Dev Test Lab is a service that enables developers to efficiently self-manage virtual machines and platform as a service resources without waiting for approvals. Dev Test Labs creates labs consisting of pre-configured bases or Azure Resource Manager templates. Question 34. What type of documents does the Microsoft Service Trust Portal provide? Now, the options are: Option A, documentation on the individual Azure services and solutions. Option B, a list of standards that Microsoft follows, pen test results, security assessments, white papers, FAQs, and other documents that can be used to show Microsoft's compliance efforts. Option C, specific recommendations about your uses of Azure and ways you can improve. Option D, a tool that helps you manage your compliance to various standards. And the correct answer is Option B, a list of standards that Microsoft follows, pen test results, security assessments, white papers, FAQs, and other documents that can be used to show Microsoft's compliance efforts. Explanation: a list of standards that Microsoft follows, pen test results, security assessments, white papers, FAQs, and other documents that can be used to show Microsoft's compliance efforts. Question 35. Which of the following services would not be considered infrastructure as a service? Now, the options are: Option A, Virtual Network Interface Card (NIC). Option B, Virtual Network. Option C, Azure Functions App. Option D, Virtual Machine. And the correct answer is option C, Azure Functions App. Explanation. Functions are small pieces of code that you give to Azure to run for you, and you have no access to the underlying infrastructure. Question 36. What software is used to synchronize your on-premises AD with your Azure AD? Now, the options are option A, LDAP, option B, AD Connect, option C, Azure AD Federation Services, option D, Azure AD Domain Services. And the correct answer is option B, AD Connect. Explanation. AD Connect is used to synchronize your corporate AD with Azure AD. Question 37. Select yes or no for the following statement. You are planning to use the IoT Hub services in Azure. Does this service capable of communicating from a device to the cloud and from the cloud to the device? Now, the options are option A, yes, option B, no, and the correct answer is option A, yes. Explanation. Yes, this is possible with IoT Hub. IoT Hub is a managed service hosted in the cloud that acts as a central message hub for communication between an IoT application and its attached devices. You can connect millions of devices and their backend solutions reliably and securely. Almost any device can be connected to an IoT hub. Question 38. Your company has users all over the world. You are asked to prepare a solution that can distribute content to users around the world with minimal latency. Which of the following could you use for this requirement? Now, the options are option A, Azure Content Delivery Network, option B, Azure Load Balancer, option C, Azure Application Gateway, option D, Azure Virtual Network, and the correct answer is option A, Azure Content Delivery Network. Explanation. Azure Content Delivery Network is a global CDN solution for delivering high bandwidth content. With Azure CDN, you can cache static objects loaded from Azure Blob Storage, a web application, or any publicly accessible web server by using the closest point of presence server. Question 39. Select yes or no for the following statement. Azure Tax can be applied to Azure resources, resource groups, and subscriptions, which will help to logically organize the resources into a taxonomy. Now, the options are option A, yes, option B, no, and the correct answer is option A, yes. Explanation. Yes, tax can be leveraged to organize the resources and categorize the billing. According to Azure documentation, you apply tax to your Azure resources, resource groups, and subscriptions to logically organize them into a taxonomy. Each tag consists of a name and a value pair. For example, you can apply the name environment and the value production to all the resources in production. Question 40. Your company has an Azure subscription. They have created a virtual network and also launched a set of virtual machines in the virtual network. Now, they wanted to change the way the traffic is routed in the virtual network. Which of the following concept could be used to satisfy this requirement? Now, the options are option A, Azure Management Groups, option B, User-Defined Routes, option C, Network Security Groups, option D, Application Security Groups, and the correct answer is option B, User-Defined Routes. Explanation. Azure automatically creates a route table for each subnet within an Azure virtual network and adds system default routes to the table. To learn more about virtual networks and subnets, see Virtual Network Overview. You can override some of Azure system routes with custom routes and add additional custom routes to route table. Azure routes outbound traffic from a subnet based on the routes in a subnet's route table. Question 41. What advantage does an application gateway have over a load balancer? Now, the options are option A. Application gateway can be scaled so that 2, 3 or more instances of the gateway can support your application. Option B. Application gateway is more like an enterprise grade product.
You should not use a load balancer in production. Option C. Application gateway understands the HTTP protocol and can interpret the URL and make decisions based on the URL. And the correct answer is option C. Application gateway understands the HTTP protocol and can interpret the URL and make decisions based on the URL. Explanation. Application gateway can make load balancing decisions based on the URL path, while a load balancer can't. Question 42. Which type of Azure storage supports the server message block SMB protocol and the network file system NFS protocol for accessing files? Now, the options are option A, Storage Explorer, option B, General Purpose V2, option C, Azure File Storage, option D, Azure Table Storage, and the correct answer is option C, Azure File Storage. Explanation. Azure Files offers two industry standard file system protocols for mounting Azure file shares: the server message block protocol and the network file system protocol, allowing you to pick the protocol that is the best fit for your workload. Question 43. Which of the following are one of the advantages of running your cloud in a private cloud? Now, the options are option A, assurance that your code, data and applications are running on isolated hardware and on an isolated network. Option B, private cloud is significantly cheaper than the public cloud. Option C, you own the hardware so you can change private cloud hosting providers easily. And the correct answer is option A, assurance that your code, data and applications are running on isolated hardware and on an isolated network. Explanation. Private cloud generally means that you are running your code on isolated computing, not mixed in with other companies. Question 44. True or false? Azure Monitor allows you to monitor activity logs from Azure Active Directory. Now, the options are option A, false, option B, true, and the correct answer is option A, false. Explanation. You can route Azure Active Directory, Azure AD, activity logs to several endpoints for long-term retention and data insights. Using this feature, you can send Azure AD activity logs to Azure Monitor logs to enable rich visualization, monitoring, and alerting on the connected data. Question 45. Which Azure Governance tool allows you to implement compliance audits to find instances of Azure resources that do not follow the company policy or even prevent those resources from being created? Now the options are option A, role-based access control, option B, identity and access management, option C, resource logs, option D, Azure policy, and the correct answer is option D, Azure policy. Explanation. Azure policy helps to enforce organizational standards and to access compliance at scale. Through its compliance dashboard, it provides an aggregated view to evaluate the overall state of the environment, with the ability to drill down to the per resource, per policy granularity. It also helps to bring your resources to compliance through bulk remediation for existing resources and automatic remediation for new resources. Question 46. With Azure Public Cloud, anyone with a valid credit card can sign up and get services immediately, subject to geography restrictions. Now the options are option A, false, option B, true, and the correct answer is option B, true. Explanation. Yes, Azure Public Cloud is open to the public in all countries that Azure supports. Question 47. Your company has a virtual network and the networking team wants to implement the following requirements: to create two subnets and two VMS in each subnet, to create a user-defined route to enable the two subnet resources to communicate. Can a user-defined route be created without creating a subnet? Now the options are option A, UDR cannot be created without creating subnet. Option B, there is no relation between root and subnet. Option C, UDR can be created without creating subnet. Option D, at least one UDR is required to create a subnet. And the correct answer is option C, UDR can be created without creating subnet. Explanation: UDR can be created prior to the creation of the subnet, but it would be effective only once the root is associated with subnet. Option A is incorrect. There is no mandatory validation to have a subnet while creating a UDR. Option B is incorrect. UDR is relevant when resources of the subnets communicate with each other. Option D is incorrect. UDR is required to associate with subnet. It is not required during the creation.
Question 48. As a cloud solutions architect, the company management asked you to check how aligned its company's security posture is with Microsoft's best practice recommendations for security. Which security feature would help to identify the current identity practices and advise improvements? Now the options are: Option A, Azure Information Protection. Option B, Azure AD Identity Protection. Option C, Security Center. Option D, Azure AD Identity Secure Score. And the correct answer is option D, Azure AD Identity Secure Score. Explanation: Azure AD Identity Secure Score helps in identifying the identity secure score to provide the recommendations. The Identity Secure Score is a percentage that functions as an indicator for how aligned you are with Microsoft's best practice recommendations for security. Each improvement action in Identity Secure Score is tailored to your specific configuration. Option A is incorrect because AIP is used primarily for classifying and protecting documents and emails. Option B is incorrect because Azure AD Identity Protection helps in identifying the vulnerabilities related to identity. Option C is incorrect. Security Center primarily accesses the environment and workloads and provides recommendations for threat prevention. Question 49. A company wants to implement Azure AD Identity Protection. Following are the key requirements: prompt users if the credentials are compromised. Identify suspicious login attempts. Which of the following policies implement the above requirements? Select two options. Now the options are: Option A, User Risk Policy. Option B, Azure Policy. Option C, Sign in Risk Policy. Option D, MFA Registration Policy. And the correct answer is option A, User Risk Policy, and option C, Sign in Risk Policy. Explanation: Option A is correct. It is used if the credentials are compromised. Option C is correct. It is considered for any suspicious sign ins like multiple incorrect login attempts. Option B is incorrect. It is a service to create policies in Azure. Option D is incorrect. It ensures that the user registers for MFA. Question 50. What is the significance of the Azure reason? Why is it important? Now the options are: Option A, even though you have to choose a reason when creating resources, there's generally no consequence of what you select. You can create a network in one region and then create virtual machines for that network in another region. Option B, you must select a region when creating most resources, and the region is the area of the world where those resources will be physically located. Option C, once you select a region, you cannot create resources outside of that region. So, selecting the right region is an important decision. Option D, region is just a folder structure in which you organize resources much like file folders on a computer. And the correct answer is option B. You must select a region when creating most resources, and the region is the area of the world where those resources will be physically located. Explanation: the region is the area of the world where resources get created. You can create resources in any region that you have access to. But there are sometimes restrictions when creating a resource in one region that related resources like networks must also be in the same region for logical reasons. Question 51. Where can you go to see what standards Microsoft is in compliance with? Now the options are: Option A, Azure Privacy Page. Option B, Azure Security Center. Option C, Azure Service Health. Option D, Trust Center. And
The correct answer is option D, Trust Center. Explanation. The list of standards that Azure has been certified to meet is in the Trust Center for more info. Question 52. Which of the following is not one of the factors of multi-factor authentication MFA? Now the options are: option A, something you know; option B, something you have; option C, something you are; option D, something you can do. And the correct answer is option D, something you can do. Explanation. Something you can do is not one of the factors of multi-factor authentication. Question 53. Which of the following is true when it comes to SaaS, software as a service? Now the options are: option A, you are responsible for the scalability of the solution; option B, you are responsible for the maintenance of the underlying hardware; option C, you are responsible for configuring the application settings for client-specific customization; option D, you are responsible for the high availability of the solution. And the correct answer is option C, you are responsible for configuring the application settings for client-specific customization. Explanation. SaaS provides a complete software solution that you purchase on a pay-as-you-go basis from a cloud service provider. You rent the use of an app for your organization and your users connect to it over the internet, usually with a web browser. All of the underlying infrastructure, middleware, app software, and app data are located in the service provider's data center. The service provider manages the hardware and software, and with the appropriate service agreement, will ensure the availability and the security of the app and your data as well. SaaS allows your organization to get quickly up and running with an app at minimal upfront cost. Question 54. True or false? Through Azure Active Directory, one can control access to an application but not the resources of the application. Now, the options are: option A, true; option B, false. And the correct answer is option B, false. Explanation. Azure AD can control the access of both the apps and the app resources. Question 55. Select yes or no for the following statement. Is the standard support plan included with an Azure free account by default? Now the options are: option A, yes; option B, no. And the correct answer is option B, no. Explanation. No. The basic support plan is the default, which is associated with all Azure accounts. The standard support plan must be purchased separately. Question 56. Which Azure service can be enabled to enable multi-factor authentication for administrators, but not require it for regular users? Now, the options are: option A, Advanced Threat Protection; option B, Privileged Identity Management; option C, Azure AD B2B; option D, Azure Firewall. And the correct answer is option B, Privileged Identity Management. Explanation. Privileged identity management can be used to ensure privileged users have to jump through additional verification because of their role. Question 57. Select yes or no for the following statement. Does the Azure free account allow you to host production-based resources? Now the options are: option A, yes; option B, no. And the correct answer is option A, yes. Explanation. Yes, you can, although you need to understand that you will need to pay for any extra charges that don't come under the free account conditions. Question 58. A company is planning to purchase Azure AD Tier Premium P2 for its Azure account. Does the Azure AD Premium P2 tier come with an SLA of any Azure AD service 99.99%? Now the options are: option A, yes; option B, no. And the correct answer is option A, yes. Question 59. You plan to host your applications on Azure using serverless components. However, You don't want to manage the underlying infrastructure. Which of the following could be used to implement a workflow that would run over a serverless infrastructure? Now, the options are Option A, Azure Logic Apps. Option B, Azure Service Bus. Option C, Azure Function App. Option D, Azure Storage. And the correct answer is option A, Azure Logic Apps. Explanation: Azure Logic Apps is a cloud based platform for creating and running automated workflows that integrate your apps, data, services, and systems. With this platform, you can quickly develop highly scalable integration solutions for your enterprise and business to business B2B scenarios. Option B is incorrect. Azure Service Bus is used as a messaging service in Azure. Option C is incorrect. Azure Function App, this is used to host functions in Azure. Option D is incorrect. Azure Storage is used as a storage service in Azure. Question 60. Which of the following are one of the advantages of running your cloud in a private cloud? Now, the options are Option A, assurance that your code, data, and applications are running on isolated hardware and on an isolated network. Option B, private cloud is significantly cheaper than the public cloud. Option C, you own the hardware, so you can change private cloud hosting providers easily. And the correct answer is option A, assurance that your code, data, and applications are running on isolated hardware and on an isolated network. Explanation: Private cloud generally means that you are running your code on isolated computing, not mixed in with other companies. Question 61. Select yes or no for the following statement. Azure services in public preview come with a service level agreement SLA. Now the options are Option A, yes. Option B, no. And the correct answer is option B, no. Explanation: No. Resources in the public review don't come with an SLA. That is the reason why resources under public review were not recommended for production load. Question 62. What is the advantage of passwordless authentication over password plus multi-factor authentication? Now the options are Option A, availability. Option B, convenience. Option C, security. Option D, performance. And the correct answer is option B, convenience. Explanation: Passwordless authentication provides a higher level of convenience over the password or MFA style of authentication. Security is similar between them. Question 63. Which Azure management tool analyzes your uses of Azure and makes suggestions specifically targeted to help you optimize your uses of Azure regarding cost, security, and performance? Now the options are Option A, Azure Mobile App. Option B, Azure Service Health. Option C, Azure Advisor. Option D, Azure Firewall. And the correct answer is option C, Azure Advisor. Explanation: Azure Advisor analyzes your specific uses of Azure and makes helpful suggestions on how it can be improved. Question 64. A company plans to set up a solution in Azure. The solution must meet the following requirements. Provide a digital online assistant for speech support. What is the best option for this requirement? Now the options are Option A, Azure Machine Learning. Option B, Azure IoT Hub. Option C, Azure Bot Service. Option D, Azure Functions. And the correct answer is option C, Azure Bot Service. Explanation: Azure Bot Service is a managed bot development service that helps you seamlessly connect to your users via popular channels. Pay only for messages delivered using premium channels, which allow your bot to communicate with users within your own application or on your website. Question 65. Select yes or no for the following statement. When the virtual machine is stopped, does the storage attached to it incur cost? Now the options are Option A, yes. option B, no. And the correct answer is option A, yes. Explanation. Yes, the disk attached to a virtual machine have different costs associated with them.
Question 66. True or false? You can create a virtual machine without attaching it to a virtual network. Now, the options are option A, false, option B, true, and the correct answer is option A, false. Explanation. All virtual machines must be associated with at least one virtual network subnet using a network interface card. Question 67. Your company has users all over the world. You are asked to prepare a solution that can distribute content to users around the world with minimal latency. Which of the following could you use for this requirement? Now, the options are option A, Azure Content Delivery Network, option B, Azure Load Balancer, option C, Azure Application Gateway, option D, Azure Virtual Network, and the correct answer is option A, Azure Content Delivery Network. Explanation. Azure Content Delivery Network CDN is a global CDN solution for delivering high bandwidth content. With Azure CDN, you can cache static objects loaded from Azure Blob Storage, a web application, or any publicly accessible web server by using the closest point of presence POP server. Question 68. Select yes or no for the following statement. Azure Tax can be applied to Azure resources, resource groups, and subscriptions, which will help to logically organize the resources into a taxonomy. Now, the options are option A, yes, option B, no. And the correct answer is option A, yes. Explanation. Yes, tax can be leveraged to organize the resources and categorize the billing. According to Azure documentation, you apply tags to your Azure resources, resource groups, and subscriptions to logically organize them into a taxonomy. Each tag consists of a name and a value pair. For example, you can apply the name environment and the value production to all the resources in production. Question 69. Select the ways to increase the security of a traditional user ID and password system. Choose all that apply. Now, the options are option A, require longer and more complex passwords. Option B, use multi-factor authentication which requires an additional device, something you have, to verify identity. Option C, do not allow users to log into an application except using a company registered device. Option D, require users to change their passwords more frequently. And the correct answer is option A, B, C, and D. All are correct. Explanation. All of these are ways to increase the security on an account. Question 70. One of the three core principles of the Zero Trust model of security is, now, the options are option A, block all external network ports. Option B, verify explicitly. Option C, use a firewall on the network perimeter. Option D, always encrypt data stored on the hard disk. And the correct answer is option B, verify explicitly. Explanation. The three principles of Zero Trust are verify explicitly, use least privilege access, and assume breach. Question 71. Your company has an Azure subscription. They have created a virtual network and also launched a set of virtual machines in the virtual network. Now, they wanted to change the way the traffic is routed in the virtual network. Which of the following concepts could be used to satisfy this requirement? Now, the options are option A, Azure Management Groups. Option B, User-Defined Routes. Option C, Network Security Groups. Option D, Application Security Groups. And the correct answer is option B, User-Defined Routes. Explanation. Azure automatically creates a route table for each subnet within an Azure virtual network and adds system default routes to the table. You can override some of the Azure system routes with custom routes and add additional custom routes to route tables.
Azure routes outbound traffic from a subnet based on the routes in a subnet's route table. Question 72. Your company has a virtual network and the networking team wants to implement the following requirements. To create two subnets and two VMS in each subnet. To create a user-defined route to enable the two subnet resources to communicate. Can a user-defined route be created without creating a subnet? Now, the options are: Option A. UDR cannot be created without creating subnet. Option B. There is no relation between root and subnet. Option C. UDR can be created without creating subnet. Option D. At least one UDR is required to create a subnet. And the correct answer is option C. UDR can be created without creating subnet. Explanation: UDR can be created prior to the creation of the subnet, but it would be effective only once the root is associated with subnet. Option A is incorrect. There is no mandatory validation to have a subnet while creating a UDR. Option B is incorrect. UDR is relevant when resources of the subnets communicate with each other. Option D is incorrect. UDR is required to associate with subnet. It is not required during the creation. Question 73. What is the concept of availability? Now, the options are: Option A. A system that has a single point of failure. Option B. The percentage of time a system responds properly to request, expressed as a percentage over time. Option C. A system that can scale up and scale down depending on customer demand. Option D. A system must have 100% of time to be considered available. And the correct answer is option C. A system that can scale up and scale down depending on customer demand. Explanation: Availability. What percentage of time does a system respond properly to request? Expressed as a percentage over time for more information on reason and availability zones. Question 74. What is the benefit of using PowerShell over CLI? Now, the options are: Option A, cheaper. Option B, quicker to deploy VMS. Option C, more powerful commands. Option D, no benefit, it is the same. And the correct answer is option D, no benefit, it is the same. Explanation: There is no benefit, only a matter of personal choice. Question 75. As a cloud solutions architect, the company management asked you to check how aligned this company's security posture is with Microsoft's best practice recommendations for security. Which security feature would help to identify the current identity practices and advise improvements? Now, the options are: Option A, Azure Information Protection. Option B, Azure AD Identity Protection. Option C, Security Center. Option D, Azure AD Identity Secure Score. And the correct answer is option D, Azure AD Identity Secure Score. Explanation: Azure AD Identity Secure Score helps in identifying the identity secure score to provide the recommendations. The identity secure score is a percentage that functions as an indicator for how aligned you are with Microsoft's best practice recommendations for security. Each improvement action in identity secure score is tailored to your specific configuration. Question 76. A company is planning to set up a solution in Azure. They have the following key requirement. Give the ability to process data from millions of sensors. Which of the below Azure services can be used for this purpose? Now, the options are: Option A, Azure Machine Learning. Option B, Azure IoT Hub. Option C, Azure AI Bot. Option D, Azure Functions. And the correct answer is option B, Azure IoT Hub. Explanation: Azure IoT Hub is Microsoft's Internet of Things connected to the cloud. It's a fully managed cloud service that enables reliable and secure bidirectional communications between millions of IoT devices and a solution backend. Question 77. A company is planning to use Azure Cloud for hosting resources. Which of the following is the key advantage of hosting resources in the Azure public cloud? Now, the options are: Option A: all users across the world can access the resources in your Azure account. Option B: high reliability. A vast network of servers ensures against failure. Option C: only privileged users can have access to resources in your Azure account. Option D: you pay a capital upfront cost when using resources in the public cloud. And the correct answer is option B: high reliability. A vast network of servers ensures against failure. Explanation: advantages of public clouds: lower cost. No need to purchase hardware or software, and you pay only for the service you use. No maintenance. Your service provider provides the maintenance. Near unlimited scalability. On demand resources are available to meet your business needs. High reliability. A vast network of servers ensures against failure. Question 78. You have set up an Azure subscription and an Azure tenant. Now, you want to start deploying resources on the Azure platform. Which solution could help you to group the resources logically? Now, the options are: Option A: Availability zones. Option B: Azure resource groups. Option C: Azure Resource Manager. Option D: Azure regions. And the correct answer is option B: Azure resource groups. Explanation: this can be done with the help of resource groups. A resource group is a container that holds related resources for an Azure solution. The resource group can include all the resources for the solution or only those resources that you want to manage as a group. Question 79. Which two features does virtual machine scale sets provide as part of the core product? Pick two options. Now, the options are: Option A: automatic installation of supporting apps and deployment of custom code. Option B: content delivery network. Option C: load balancing between virtual machines. Option D: firewall. Option E: auto scaling of virtual machines. And the correct answer is option C: load balancing between virtual machines, and option E: auto scaling of virtual machines. Explanation: VMSS provides auto scale features and has a built in load balancer. You still need to have a way to deploy your code to the new servers, as you do with regular VMS. Question 80. What data format are ARM templates created in? Now, the options are: Option A: YAML. Option B: XML. Option C: HTML. Option D: JSON. And the correct answer is option D: JSON. Explanation: ARM templates are created in JSON. Question 81. Which of the following is used as an identity management solution in Azure? Now, the options are: Option A: Azure AD. Option B: Azure Advisor. Option C: Azure Security Center. Option D: Azure Monitor. And the correct answer is option A: Azure AD. Explanation: Azure Active Directory is Microsoft's multi-tenant, cloud-based identity and access management service. Option B is incorrect. Azure Advisor, this is used to provide recommendations. Option C is incorrect. Azure Security Center is used to protect resources in Azure. Option D is incorrect. Azure Monitor is used to monitor resources in Azure. Question 82. Azure has just been introduced to a company and they have set up resources as part of their subscription. Now, the company management wants to know the estimated cost of the resources in the cloud. To get this information, they decide to use the pricing calculator. Would this satisfy the requirement? Now, the options are: Option A: yes. Option B: no. And the correct answer is option A: yes. Explanation: Azure Pricing Calculator is a free cost management tool that can help you estimate your cloud cost for new Azure deployments or variations of your existing workloads. Using the calculator, reducing Azure storage cost with cloud volumes on tap. Question 83. You want to try out some services which Azure is offering in preview. Does Microsoft provide a separate portal to work with preview features? Now, the options are option A, yes, option B, no, and the correct answer is option A, yes. Explanation. Yes, we can see all previews of Azure in a separate portal. Question 84. An organization wants to create a virtual machine on Azure as part of its subscription. Is it possible to assign the Azure virtual machine to multiple resource groups? Now, the options are option A, yes, option B, no, and the correct answer is option B, no. Explanation. A resource in Azure can only be a part of a single resource group. When you define a resource such as an Azure virtual machine, it would be part of a single resource group. Question 85. Select yes or no for the following statement. General Data Protection Regulation (GDPR) defines data protection and privacy rules. Now, the options are option A, yes, option B, no, and the correct answer is option A, yes. Explanation. The entire idea of the General Data Protection Regulation is to define the way personal data is collected and managed by organizations. Companies are required to perform data protection impact assessments to ensure that they comply with the regulation. Question 86. Which of the following Azure services falls under serverless computing? Now, the options are option A, Azure Virtual Machines, option B, Azure SQL Database, Elastic Pool, option C, Azure Functions, option D, Availability Sets, and the correct answer is option C, Azure Functions. Explanation. Azure Function is an example of serverless computing. Here, the underlying compute infrastructure is managed by the service itself. Option A is incorrect. Virtual machine service is an infrastructure as a service. Option B is incorrect. Azure SQL Database Elastic Pool is a platform as a service. Option D is incorrect. Availability sets is used to manage the availability of virtual machines. Question 87. Which of the following resources are not considered compute resources? Now, the options are option A, virtual machines, option B, function apps, option C, virtual machine scale sets, option D, load balancer, option E, Azure batch, and the correct answer is option D, load balancer. Explanation. A load balancer is a networking product and does not execute your code. Question 88. On which Azure website are you likely to find the results of pen tests and security assessments conducted by third parties regarding Azure? Now, the options are option A, Azure Portal, option B, LinkedIn, option C, Service Trust Portal, option D, Microsoft Docs, and the correct answer is option C, Service Trust Portal. Explanation. The Service Trust Portal hosts the Compliance Manager application and is Microsoft's public site for publishing audit reports and other compliance related information related to Microsoft's cloud services. STP users can download audit reports produced by external auditors and gain insight from Microsoft authored white papers that provide details on how Microsoft builds and operates their cloud services. Question 89. True or false? Azure PowerShell scripts and Command Line Interface CLI scripts are entirely compatible with each other. Now, the options are option A, true, option B, false, and the correct answer is option B, false. Explanation. No. PowerShell is its own language different than CLI. Question 90. You are planning on hosting resources using Azure services. Which of the following would you use for the below requirement? Provide a service that is used to add artificial intelligence features to applications. Now, the options are option A, Azure Cognitive Service, option B, Azure DevOps,
Option C, Azure Bot Service. Option D, Azure Synapse Analytics. And the correct answer is option A, Azure Cognitive Service. Explanation. You can use the Azure Cognitive Service to build applications with artificial intelligence capabilities. There are a number of services available in Azure Cognitive Services based on the following categories. Azure Cognitive Services are cloud-based services with REST APIs and client library SDKs available to help you build cognitive intelligence into your applications without having artificial intelligence AI or data science skills. Option B is incorrect. Azure DevOps is a set of tools used for implementing DevOps. Option C is incorrect. Azure Bot Service is used to build intelligent bots with an application. Option D is incorrect. Azure Synapse Analytics is used to host a data warehouse. Question 91. Your company is planning to set up an Azure subscription and an Azure tenant using Azure Active Directory. Would the company need to implement domain controllers on Azure virtual machines to use the Azure AD service? Now, the options are option A, yes. Option B, no. And the correct answer is option B, no. Explanation. Azure Active Directory is a completely managed service. You don't need to provision any infrastructure to implement Azure Active Directory. Question 92. Which tool within the Azure portal will make specific recommendations based on your actual uses for how you can improve your use of Azure? Now, the options are option A, Azure Service Health. Option B, Azure Advisor. Option C, Azure Dashboard. Option D, Azure Monitor. And the correct answer is option B, Azure Advisor. Explanation. Azure Advisor, a tool that will analyze your use of Azure and make you specific recommendations based on your uses across availability, security, performance, and cost categories. Question 93. Fill in the blanks. Dash is a service that offers a Windows 10 or Windows 11 virtual machine that runs in the cloud for use as your workstation. Now, the options are option A, Azure Virtual Desktop. Option B, VPN Gateway. Option C, Azure Web Apps. Option D, Express Route. And the correct answer is option A, Azure Virtual Desktop. Explanation. Azure Virtual Desktop is a desktop and app virtualization service that runs on the cloud. Question 94. You want to use the Azure Key Vault service to store certificates in the Azure cloud. Would this service meet the requirement? Now, the options are option A, yes. Option B, no. And the correct answer is option A, yes. Explanation. Yes, this is the right service to use for this requirement. With the help of the Azure Key Vault service, you can store secrets, encryption keys, and certificates. Question 95. Which Azure service can be used to meet the following requirement? Be able to organize resources for billing purposes. Now the options are option A, Azure Resource Logs. Option B, Azure Policies. Option C, Azure Blueprints. Option D, Azure Resource Tags. And the correct answer is option D, Azure Resource Tags. Explanation. Azure Resource Tags logically organize the resources into a taxonomy. Each tag consists of a name and a value pair. Option A is incorrect. Azure Resource Lock is used to protect from the accidental deletion of resources. Option B is incorrect. Azure Policies is used as a governance service for your resources. Option C is incorrect. Azure Blueprints is used to orchestrate the deployment of resources. Question 96. What is an Azure subscription? Now, the options are option A. Each user account is associated with a unique subscription. If you need more than one subscription, you need to create multiple user accounts. Option B. It is the level at which services are built. All resources created under a subscription are billed to that subscription. And the correct answer is option B. It is the level at which services are built. All resources created under a subscription are built to that subscription. Explanation. Subscription is the level at which things get built. Multiple users can be associated with a subscription at various permission levels. Question 97. Fill in the blanks. Dash is a command line utility that you can use to copy blobs or files to or from a storage account. Now the options are option A, Azure Data Factory, option B, Azure Cloud Shell, option C, AZ Copy, option D, SFTP, and the correct answer is option C, AZ Copy. Explanation. AZ Copy is a command line utility that you can use to copy blobs or files to or from a storage account. Question 98. Which of the following is used as a secured high-level application platform with built-in communication and security features for internet-connected devices? Now, the options are option A, Azure Synapse, option B, Azure Sphere, option C, Azure Databricks, option D, Azure HD Insight. And the correct answer is option B, Azure Sphere. Explanation. Azure Sphere is a secured high-level application platform with built-in communication and security features for internet-connected devices. Question 99. Select yes or no for the following statement. Your company is planning on hosting a set of virtual machines in Azure. They want to save on the running compute cost for the virtual machines. Can they consider using reserved instances for this requirement? Now, the options are option A, yes, option B, no, and the correct answer is option A, yes. Explanation. Yes, by using reserved instances, they can get discounts when it comes to cost for Azure virtual machines. Reserved instances significantly reduce cost, up to 72% when compared to pay as you go prices. Question 100. Your company wants to deploy a set of Azure virtual machines. They also want to increase the availability of the underlying machines. As a solutions architect, you plan to deploy the machines across multiple subscriptions. Does this meet the requirement? Now, the options are option A, yes, option B, no, and the correct answer is option B, no. Explanation. Subscriptions cannot be used for improving availability. They are used more from a billing aspect for Azure resources. They have to deploy multiple availability zones to improve the availability. Question 101. Select yes or no for the following statement. You want to make sure that the virtual machine services in your Azure account are still available in the event of a data center failure. In order to achieve this, you decide to deploy the virtual machines across two or more availability zones. Would this fulfill the requirement? Now the options are option A, yes, option B, no, and the correct answer is option A, yes. Explanation. Yes, availability zones can be used in the case of data center wide failure. Question 102. How does multi-factor authentication make a system more secure? Now the options are option A, it allows the user to log in without a password because they have already previously been validated using a browser cookie. Option B, it doesn't make it more secure. Option C, it is another password that a user has to memorize, making it more secure. Option D, it requires the user to have access to their verified phone in order to log in. And the correct answer is option D. It requires the user to have access to their verified phone in order to log in. Explanation. Multi-factor authentication MFA, the concept of having something additional to a password that is required to log in. Passwords are findable or guessable, but having your mobile phone on you to receive a phone call, text, or run an app to get a code is harder for an unknown hacker to get. Question 103. A company needs to deploy a set of virtual machines on their Azure environment. The security team mandated that the servers have to be deployed on a separate network segment. Which of the following could be used to deploy the server so that it meets the company's needs? Now the options are option A, a separate resource group,
Option B, a separate virtual network. Option C, a separate network interface for the server. Option D, a separate account for the server. And the correct answer is option B, a separate virtual network. Explanation: if the server needs to be isolated, then consider deploying a new virtual network for the server. Question 104. You are planning to create an Azure free account. Which of the following is correct when it comes to the Azure free account? Select two options. Now, the options are: Option A, you get free access to all services for 12 months. Option B, you get USD 200 worth of credit that you can spend during the first 30 days of sign up. Option C, after the 30-day period or USD 200 worth of credit is over, you need to convert to a pay as you go account. Option D, you only need to have a valid mobile number to sign up for the account. And the correct answer is option B. You get USD 200 worth of credit that you can spend during the first 30 days of sign up. And option C, after the 30-day period or USD 200 worth of credit is over, you need to convert to a pay as you go account. Explanation: Azure free accounts are available to all new Azure customers who haven't had a free account previously and received a $200 credit. Option A is incorrect because you don't get free access to all products, just the popular ones. Option D is incorrect because you also need to have a credit card or Microsoft account in hand. Question 105. A company is planning to set up a solution on the Azure platform. The solution has the following main key requirement: be able to collect events from multiple sources and then relay them to an application. Which of the following would be best suited for this requirement? Now the options are: Option A, Azure Event Grid. Option B, Azure DevOps. Option C, Azure Kubernetes. Option D, Azure DevTest Labs. And the correct answer is option A, Azure Event Grid. Explanation: Azure Event Grid allows you to easily build applications with event-based architectures. Event Grid has built-in support for events coming from Azure services like storage blobs and resource groups. Event Grid also has support for your own events using custom topics. Question 106. Select yes or no for the following statement. Is it possible to manage external partners using the business-to-business B2B feature of Azure AD? Now the options are: Option A, yes. Option B, no. And the correct answer is option A, yes. Explanation: with Azure AD, you can manage external partners while maintaining control over your own corporate data. Question 107. Choose the appropriate category for the following Azure services. Azure Kubernetes, Business Intelligence BI Services. Now the options are: Option A, Software as a Service. Option B, Platform as a Service. Option C, Infrastructure as a Service. Option D, Hardware as a Service. And the correct answer is option B, Platform as a Service. Explanation: Kubernetes and BI services come under the Platform as a Service category. Question 108. A company wants to make use of Azure Service Health. Is it possible for the company administrator to prevent service failures from affecting a selected Azure virtual machine by only using this service? Now the options are: Option A, yes. Option B, no. And the correct answer is option B, no. Explanation: the Azure Service Health service is used to monitor the health of the underlying infrastructure that is used to host Azure-based services. You cannot use this service to prevent the service failure of an Azure virtual machine. If you want to increase the availability of your virtual machines, consider deploying the virtual machines across an availability set or an availability zone. Question 109. How many minutes per month downtime is 99.99% availability? Now the options are: Option A, 1. Option B, 4. Option C, 100. Option D, 40. And the correct answer is option B, 4. Question 110. Which style of computing is easiest when migrating an existing hosted application from your own data center into the cloud. Now, the options are option A, IaaS, option B, PaaS, option C, FaaS, option D, serverless. And the correct answer is option A, IaaS. Explanation. Infrastructure as a service is the easiest to migrate into from an existing hosted app lift and shift. Question 111. Fill in the blanks. Dash allows you to use your own domain names for your internal private Azure virtual machines. Now the options are option A, Azure DNS private zones, option B, Azure Bastion, option C, Azure Traffic Manager, option D, Azure Load Balancer. And the correct answer is option A, Azure DNS private zones. Explanation. Azure DNS private zones provide a simple, reliable, secure DNS service to manage and resolve names in a virtual network without the need to create and manage a custom DNS solution. Use your own domain names and get name resolution for virtual machines within and between virtual networks. Additionally, configure zone names with a split horizon view to allow a private and a public DNS zone to share the same name. Question 112. You are planning to set up a solution on the Azure platform. The solution has the following key requirement. Provide capabilities to perform big data analytics over data stored on Azure Blob Storage. Which of the following would be best suited for this requirement? Now the options are option A, Azure Data Lake Storage, option B, Azure Application Gateway, option C, Azure Storage Accounts, option D, Azure SQL Data Warehouse. And the correct answer is option A, Azure Data Lake Storage. Explanation. This can be achieved by the Azure Data Lake Storage service. Azure Data Lake is a cloud platform designed to support big data analytics. It provides unlimited storage for structured, semi-structured, or unstructured data. It can be used to store any type of data of any size. Question 113. Select yes or no for the following statement. Does the Cosmos DB service provide the ability to access data using different types of APIs such as MongoDB and Cassandra? Now the options are option A, yes, option B, no. And the correct answer is option A, yes. Explanation. Cosmos DB is a multi-model database. The Azure Cosmos DB Cassandra API is compatible with Cassandra query language. The Azure Cosmos DB API for MongoDB makes it easy to use Cosmos DB as if it were a MongoDB database. You can leverage your MongoDB experience and continue to use your favorite MongoDB drivers, SDKs, and tools by pointing your application to the API for MongoDB accounts connection string. Question 114. Select yes or no for the following statement. A company decided to store application-related user data in the Azure File Service. Is this the ideal service for the storage of user-related data? Now, the options are option A, yes, option B, no, and the correct answer is option B, no. Explanation. No, file service is not the right option. Azure File Service, also known as Azure Files, is a part of the Microsoft Azure Cloud Platform that allows organizations to share files on premises and in the cloud using server, message block, SMB, protocol, and APIs. Question 115. You have defined an Azure virtual network in a resource group. Now, you intend to assign a policy that specifies that virtual networks are not an allowed resource type in the resource group. Once the policy is applied, what happens to the existing network? Now, the options are option A, the network is automatically deleted. Option B, the network is moved to a different resource group. Option C, the network resources would become a read-only resource. Option D, the virtual network would continue to exist as it is. And the correct answer is option D, the virtual network would continue to exist as it is. Explanation. The virtual network would continue to exist as it is, but Azure policies would show the resources as non-compliant resources. Question 116. Select yes or no for the following statement. Does Azure Active Directory provide authentication services for services hosted in Azure and Microsoft Office 365? Now the options are option A, yes, option B, no. And the correct answer is option A, yes. Explanation. You can use Azure Active Directory to authenticate to both Azure based resources and also to Microsoft Office 365. Question 117. A company currently has the following unused resources as part of its premium subscription: 10 user accounts in Azure AD, 5 user groups in Azure AD, 10 public IP address, 10 network interfaces. They want to reduce the cost for resources hosted in Azure. They decide to remove the user accounts from Azure AD. Would this meet the requirement? Now the options are option A, yes, option B, no, and the correct answer is option B, no. Explanation. When we look at the pricing for Azure Active Directory, you can create 50,000 objects as part of the free version. These objects include both users and groups. For the premium subscription, there are no object limits. Question 118. A company is planning to deploy a web application to the Azure App Service. Would the company administrative team have full control over the underlying machine hosting the web application? Now the options are option A, yes, option B, no, and the correct answer is option B, no. Explanation. The Azure Web App Service is a platform as a service. Here the underlying infrastructure is completely managed by Azure. Question 119. You need to create a virtual machine in Azure. You are using a Windows desktop along with the Azure command line interface. Which of the following would let you use the Azure command line interface? Select two options. Now the options are option A, PowerShell, option B, File and Print Explorer, option C, Command Prompt, option D, Control Panel. And the correct answer is option A, PowerShell, and option C, Command Prompt. Explanation. You can launch the Azure command line interface from the command prompt or PowerShell. Question 120. Select yes or no for the below statement. A company is planning to set up an Azure free account. Does the standard support plan come along with the Azure free account? Now, the options are option A, yes, option B, no, and the correct answer is option B, no. Explanation. The basic support plan is the default one, which is associated with all Azure accounts. In order to have a standard support plan, it needs to be purchased. Question 121. What is the main management tool used for managing Azure resources with a graphical user interface? Now, the options are option A, PowerShell, option B, Azure Portal, option C, Azure Storage Explorer, option D, Remote Desktop Protocol RDP, and the correct answer is option B, Azure Portal. Explanation. Azure Portal is the website used to manage your resources in Azure. Question 122. What is the most number of virtual machines that can be managed under a single virtual machine scale set? Now, the options are option A, 100, option B, 10, option C, 1000, option D, 1, and the correct answer is option C, 1000. Explanation. Up to 1000 virtual machines can be managed under a single VMSS. Question 123. What are Azure Availability Zones? Now the options are option A, a folder structure in Azure in which you organize resources like databases, virtual machines, virtual networks, or almost any resource. Option B, this is the same as a reason. Option C, a feature of Azure that allows you to manually specify into which data center your virtual machines are placed, which allows you to achieve higher availability than any other option. Option D, within each individual data center, certain racks of servers have been architected by Azure to have higher uptime than the others. If you place your apps onto in this rack, you will get higher uptime than if you let Azure do it. And the correct answer is option C. a feature of Azure that allows you to manually specify into which data center your virtual machines are placed, which allows you to achieve higher availability than any other option. Explanation: Availability zones, unique physical locations within an Azure region, made up of one or more data centers. There is a minimum of three zones in each region. You can manually place your resources in an availability zone for highest availability. Question 124. A company is planning to set up a solution in Azure. The solution would have the following key requirement: give the ability to detect and diagnose anomalies in web apps. Which of the following would be best suited for this requirement? Now, the options are: Option A, Azure Monitor; Option B, Azure HD Insight; Option C, Azure Databricks; Option D, Azure Application Insights. And the correct answer is option D, Azure Application Insights. Explanation: Application Insights, a feature of Azure Monitor, is an extensible application performance management APM service for developers and DevOps professionals. Use it to monitor your live applications. It will automatically detect performance anomalies and includes powerful analytics tools to help you diagnose issues and to understand what users actually do with your app. It's designed to help you continuously improve performance and usability. Question 125. Which of the following options is related to the statement given below? A European policy that regulates data privacy and data protection. Now, the options are: Option A, Azure Government; Option B, GDPR; Option C, ISO; Option D, NIST. And the correct answer is option B, GDPR. Explanation: The General Data Protection Regulation GDPR introduces new rules for organizations that offer goods and services to people in the European Union. Question 126. A company is planning to host a web application and also container-based solutions in Azure. Which of the following is best suited for this requirement? Select two options. Now, the options are: Option A, Azure Data Lake Analytics; Option B, Azure Load Balancers; Option C, Azure Kubernetes; Option D, Azure App Service. And the correct answer is option C, Azure Kubernetes, and option D, Azure App Service. Explanation: You can use Azure Kubernetes for managing container-based solutions. Azure App Service uses the Docker container technology to host both built-in images and custom images. Option A is incorrect. Azure Data Lake Analytics is used for big data solutions. Option B is incorrect. Azure Load Balancers is used for load balancing virtual machines. Question 127. You are planning to set up a solution in Azure. The solution would have the following key requirement: provide an isolated environment for hosting virtual machines. Which of the following would be best suited for this requirement? Now, the options are: Option A, Azure Data Lake Analytics; Option B, Azure Virtual Machine Scale Sets; Option C, Azure Virtual Network; Option D, Azure App Service. And the correct answer is option C, Azure Virtual Network. Explanation: Azure Virtual Network VNet is the fundamental building block for your private network in Azure. Azure Virtual Network enables Azure resources to securely communicate with each other, the internet, and on-premises networks. Question 128. A company has set up a virtual machine as part of their purchase subscription. They now want to move the virtual machine to another subscription. Is this possible? Now, the options are: Option A, yes; Option B, no. And the correct answer is option A, yes. Explanation: Yes, you can move Azure resources between subscriptions. Question 129. True or false? Azure has the responsibility to manage the hardware in the infrastructure as a service model. Now, the options are: Option A, true; Option B, false. And the correct answer is option A, true. Explanation: Yes, Azure still manages the hardware itself, the hypervisor, and all the physical elements behind the scenes. Question 130. Which Azure website tool is available for you to estimate the future cost of your Azure products and services by adding products to a shopping basket
and helping you calculate the costs. Now, the options are Option A, Azure Advisor. Option B, Microsoft Docs. Option C, Azure Pricing Calculator. And the correct answer is option C, Azure Pricing Calculator. Explanation: Azure Pricing Calculator lets you attempt to calculate your future bill based on resources you select and your estimate of uses. Question 131. Which two ways can be used to connect virtual network subnets in two different regions? Each is a complete solution. Choose only two options. Now, the options are Option A, Network Security Groups NSG. Option B, Azure Firewall. Option C, VNet Peering. Option D, Network Gateway. And the correct answer is option C, VNet Peering. And option D, Network Gateway. Explanation: Virtual networks can be connected by either peering or with installing network gateway devices on each. Question 132. A company wants to implement an IoT solution using the service available in Azure. Which of the following would meet the below requirement? Analyze data on end user devices. Now, the options are Option A, IoT Hub. Option B, IoT Central. Option C, IoT Edge. Option D, Azure Time Series Insights. And the correct answer is option C, IoT Edge. Explanation: Azure IoT Edge extends IoT Hub. Analyze device data locally instead of in the cloud to send fewer data to the cloud, react to events quickly, and operate offline. Question 133. Which storage access tier is the least expensive to store files per GB? Now the options are Option A, Hot tier. Option B, Premium tier. Option C, Archive tier. Option D, Cool tier. And the correct answer is option C, Archive tier. Explanation: Archive storage tier is around $0.002 per GB at the current time, well below the $0.02 per GB of the hot tier. Question 134. Select yes or no for the following statement. Azure Advisor alone is able to give recommendations on how to improve the security of the Azure AD environment. Now the options are Option A, yes. Option B, no. And the correct answer is option B, no. Explanation: Azure Advisor integrates with Security Center to give the security recommendations. Question 135. For machine learning, you want to host a big data analysis service in your Azure account. Which of the following would be best suited for this requirement? Now the options are Option A, Azure Databricks. Option B, Azure App Service. Option C, Azure Logic Apps. Option D, Azure Application Insights. And the correct answer is option A, Azure Databricks. Explanation: Azure Databricks is a data analytics platform optimized for the Microsoft Azure Cloud Services platform. Question 136. What benefit does a content delivery network CDN provide its users? Now, the options are Option A, allows you to keep temporary session information on the web visitor such as their login ID or their name. Option B, allows you to reduce the traffic coming into a web server for static, unchanging files such as images, videos, and PDFs. Option C, allows you to store data that can be retrieved later in an extremely fast and inexpensive manner. Option D, for a small fee, Azure will take over management of your virtual machine, perform OS updates, and ensure it's running well. And the correct answer is option B, allows you to reduce the traffic coming into a web server for static, unchanging files such as images, videos, and PDFs. Explanation: Content Delivery Network allows you to improve web performance by removing the burden of serving static, unchanging files from the main server to a network of servers around the globe. A CDN can reduce traffic to a server by 50% or more, which means you can serve more users or serve the same users faster. Question 137. Azure Virtual Desktop is, now the options are Option A, a customizable dashboard which tracks the health of your Azure services in the regions where you use them. Option B, a comprehensive solution for collecting, analyzing, and acting on telemetry from your cloud and on-premises environments. Option C, a service that scans your Azure configuration and recommends changes to optimize deployments, increase security, and save you money. Option D, A Windows 10 or Windows 11 desktop instance in the cloud, which allows a user to log in from almost any device and access their work computer. And the correct answer is option D. A Windows 10 or Windows 11 desktop instance in the cloud, which allows a user to log in from almost any device and access their work computer. Explanation: Virtual desktop is like a Windows 10 or 11 desktop, but it runs in the cloud. Question 138. What is the name of Azure's hosted SQL database service? Now, the options are: Option A, Cosmos DB. Option B, Azure SQL Database. Option C, Table Storage. Option D, SQL Server in a VM. And the correct answer is option B, Azure SQL Database. Explanation: SQL Database is a SQL Server compatible option in Azure, a database as a service. Question 139. Your management wants to get an idea of the cost that would be incurred when hosting resources in Azure. You recommend using the pricing calculator to get the required costing of the resources. Would this recommendation fit the requirement? Now, the options are: Option A, yes. Option B, no. And the correct answer is option A, yes. Explanation: The pricing calculator is the perfect tool for estimating the price of hosting resources in Azure. Question 140. What service does Azure provide as an optional upgrade to protect against DDoS attacks? Now, the options are: Option A, Azure DDoS Protection Basic. Option B, Advanced Threat Protection ATP. Option C, Azure protects against DDoS as part of its basic offering and there is no service you can upgrade to. Option D, Azure DDoS Protection Standard. And the correct answer is option D, Azure DDoS Protection Standard. Question 141. A company is planning to host an application on a set of virtual machines in Azure. They want to ensure that the application recovers from a region-wide failure in Azure. Which of the following concept needs to be considered to meet this requirement? Now, the options are: Option A, Scalability. Option B, Disaster Recovery. Option C, Agility. Option D, Elasticity. And the correct answer is option B, Disaster Recovery. Explanation: Disaster recovery is the process of restoring application functionality in the wake of a catastrophic loss. Question 142. You are planning to host an application on a set of virtual machines. The virtual machines are going to be running for a longer period. Which of the following should be considered to reduce the overall cost of virtual machine uses? Now, the options are: Option A, Premium Disk. Option B, Virtual Machine Scale Sets. Option C, Azure Reservations. Option D, Azure Resource Groups. And the correct answer is option C, Azure Reservations. Explanation: Azure Reservations help you save money by committing to 1 year or 3 year plans for multiple products. Committing allows you to get a discount on the resources you use. Reservations can significantly reduce your resource cost by up to 72% from pay-as-you-go prices. Reservations provide a billing discount and don't affect the runtime state of your resources. After you purchase a reservation, the discount automatically applies to matching resources. Option A is incorrect. Using premium disk is an expensive option. Option B is incorrect. Virtual machine scale sets is used for the scalability of your virtual machines. Option D is incorrect. Azure Resource Groups is used for grouping your Azure resources. Question 143. Select yes or no. For the below statement, you can manage the user privileges effectively with Azure policies. Now the options are: Option A, yes. Option B, no. And the correct answer is option B, no. Explanation: Azure policies are used from more of a governance aspect. The Microsoft documentation mentions the following on Azure policies. Question 144. A company is planning to host 2 virtual machines in Azure. Would both the virtual machines always generate the same monthly cost? Now, the options are: Option A, yes. Option B, no. And the correct answer is option B, no. Explanation: The cost for a virtual machine depends on the region where it is hosted. Question 145. Can you give someone else access to your Azure subscription without giving them your username and password? Now, the options are: Option A, yes. Option B, no. And The correct answer is option A, yes. Explanation: yes, anyone can create their own Azure account and you can give them access to your subscription with granular control as to permissions. Question 146. Fill in the blanks. Dash allows your private virtual network to access Azure services such as storage, Cosmos DB, and SQL database privately, allowing you to disable public access. Now the options are: option A, site to site VPN; option B, private endpoints; option C, SQL firewall; option D, public endpoints. And the correct answer is option B, private endpoints. Explanation: a private endpoint is a network interface that uses a private IP address from your virtual network. This network interface connects you privately and securely to a service that's powered by Azure Private Link. By enabling a private endpoint, you are bringing the service into your virtual network. Question 147. Outlook 365 is what type of hosting model? Now, the options are: option A, IaaS; option B, SaaS; option C, PaaS. And the correct answer is option B, SaaS. Question 148. A company is planning to set up a solution in Azure. The solution would have the following key requirement: provide a cloud service that helps to transform data and provide valuable insights into the data itself. Which of the following would be best suited for this requirement? Now the options are: option A, Azure Data Lake Analytics; option B, Azure Virtual Machine Skill Sets; option C, Azure Virtual Network; option D, Azure Data Factory. And the correct answer is option A, Azure Data Lake Analytics. Explanation: Azure Data Lake Analytics is an on demand analytics job service that simplifies big data. Instead of deploying, configuring, and tuning hardware, you write queries to transform your data and extract valuable insights. The analytics service can handle jobs of any scale instantly by setting the dial for how much power you need. You only pay for your job when it's running, making it cost effective. Option B is incorrect. Azure Virtual Machine Skill Sets let you create and manage a group of load balanced VMs. The number of VM instances can automatically increase or decrease in response to demand or a defined schedule. Option C is incorrect. Azure Virtual Network is a logical isolation of the Azure cloud dedicated to your subscription. Option D is incorrect. Azure Data Factory is a fully managed ETL, extract, transform, and load service. Question 149. Who is responsible for the security of the physical servers in an Azure data center? Now the options are: option A, I am responsible for securing the physical data centers; option B, Azure is responsible for securing the physical data centers. And the correct answer is option B, Azure is responsible for securing the physical data centers. Question 150. The term dash is used to describe a relationship between two regions within the same geographic region for disaster recovery purposes. Now the options are: option A, geo; option B, availability zone; option C, availability set; option D, region pair. And the correct answer is option D, region pair. Explanation: Azure pairs each region with another region to provide additional high availability options for customers. You are not restricted to storing your backups in other regions. But if you choose to do so in the region paired to your main region, you will get some benefits. Thank you for watching this video. Please do not forget to like this video and subscribe to our channel. Buy our AZ 900 premium questions with 50% off. Check link in the description.